Welcome back to another episode of the TNA podcast. You're listening to the TNA podcast.
Totally not appropriate.
We're your hosts, Taylor Sappington, a cosmic cartographer, medical astrologer, and herbalist decoding the intersection of soul, body, and belief.
And Adrienne Irizarry, a psychoalchemist trained in East Asian medicine, vibrational healing, and the sacred science of your nervous system.
Together, we blend ancient tools, clinical wisdom, and unapologetic truth-telling.
From main events to metaphysics, tarot to tonics, karma to cancel culture, nothing is off limits and everything is on the table.
This space is for the boldly curious,
the ones who crave uncomfortable conversations, crave deeper insight, and are done pretending that they don't feel what they feel.
So turn it up,
tune in,
and don't say we didn't warn you.
Welcome to TNA.
Guys, we're on YouTube.
Yes.
We are on YouTube. I promise I'm getting my shit together so I can have a creator account on Spotify. Every time I get my list shortened enough to be like, okay, I have space for this, my list then just re-scrolls itself back out. And I'm like, we were just talking about this. It's just a constantly evolving list of things to do because that's what adulting is. My girlfriend sent a picture of her little one this morning with a full red bell pepper in his hand. That was what he wanted for breakfast. And I'm like, that's incredible. What a great source of vitamin C. And then, 25 minutes later, it was waffles, yogurt, cut up strawberries, the red bell pepper. I'm like, I'm convinced that I would like to come back as a child with the understanding of what it means to be a child from an adult perspective. Somebody to make all of my meals for me and then clean it all up. Somebody to make sure I'm tucked cozy in bed at night, which my husband does a really good job of that when we have the opposite. He works very early in the morning, but somebody to clean up. My son gets up in the morning and literally has a matcha in his underwear on the couch. Well, I get everything else ready. And I'm just like, I really think you need to have the adult perspective in order to fully appreciate what it means to be a child.
Oh my goodness. I say that all the time because especially since I'm in that teenager stage, they just do not appreciate how good they have it. And they think they understand all of the things. And I'm like, oh, particularly my 17-year-old is kind of challenging sometimes. And I'm like, you have no idea how good you have it, man. You just really
always reflect. I feel like the human experience is 98% of the time retrospective.
Yeah.
It's always I understand in reverse. I feel like that's how humans operate, unless you're capable of being fully in the present. But again, I don't feel like that comes until later in life, understanding the benefit of being fully in the present moment.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and one of the things that we were talking about before we hit record. So for any of you who are watching this on YouTube, if I look a little green occasionally, it's because I'm coming out of having my first bout with vertigo,
Everybody give Adrienne a virtual hug for all of you who knows what vertigo feels like. It's fucking awful.
I've never had this experience before. And I just was sharing with Taylor before we hit record, how hard it is when you are everybody's brains and they're responsible, going back to Taylor's point about being able to sit and drink matcha in her underwear on the couch.
It's still hot. I would love to have tea while it's still piping hot.
Amen, sister. I think that all the time. I'm like, man, if I could just finish one cup of tea while it is still hot, man, that would be so nice.
It's so much better when it's hot.
It does. And then when you have to reheat it, even if you're sticking it back in the kettle and you're doing it again, it's just not the same.
No, the moment has left. Okay. It's left. So we're going to talk about friendship breakups today. Yeah. Honestly, I've seen a lot of content on social media about this. This is something that you and I have discussed privately in a lot of different conversations, but I'm starting to see an increase in the number of women sharing that they have recently gone through some form of a friendship breakup. And this is one of those recordings. It's one of those episodes that I wish I didn't have to record.
Yeah.
But it's the exact one that I've needed in my own life. Unfortunately, more times than I care to count. So here we are sitting with something that most of us don't talk about, which is friendship breakups. And they're not as public as romantic ones. Like you don't get the ice cream and the playlist and the wine night with your girlfriends. I never did any of that, but I feel like that's very standard. Like we're all going to get together and eat raw cookie dough. I could get down with that. But they happen in the background. And a lot of the times they're incredibly quiet and confusing, and sometimes they're without any explanation at all. So I thought it would be a good idea, Adrian and I have talked about this so many times, to talk about the 5 most common ways that friendships fall apart, and more importantly, how we can honor what was, feel what hurts, and then reclaim yourself on the other side of unraveling.
Yes, because the thing is, this actually goes back to one of our very first episodes where we were talking about, one, how the sisterhood fell apart, but also where communication amongst women started becoming really challenging. And a lot of this historically goes back to the burning times because it wasn't safe to be in sisterhood. It wasn't safe to be in community with other women. Before that point, we were held by
each other,
our sisterhood community. We were held by, you hear all of this coming up in my throat. Clearly, my body is saying, yes, this is a big one for you, Adrian. Yes. But I think it's really important to just start the conversation with, go back and listen to those 2 episodes, which were like in the first 5 that we
It was when we were still Holy Shift.
Yes, we were still Holy Shift at that point because these were some of the conversations. We wanted to be able to create the historical context for some of the current day challenges that we're experiencing, and how friendships amongst women tend to break apart. Actually, you can point back to the ways that we were persecuted. It was
pitted against each other.
Yep, we were pitted against each other, but also it was politicized, and we weren't allowed to have certain kinds of gatherings. Like it was illegal in some places for more than 2 women to gather at the well, for fuck's sake. So like there were a lot of moments, a lot of stops on the bus that got us to where we are now. And now the whole system is shaking and falling apart so much that like we don't even know how to go through these relationship dissolving situations in a healthy way.
I also think it's important to illuminate the fact that it's normal. Like we are going to outgrow one another. We are going to move in different directions. There are pivotal moments in our life where what once was is not going to be, and that's okay. But how we get from what once was to where we're going is the most important part. So the first type of friendship breakup that I want to talk about is the mutual drift. This is the one that doesn't crash, it dissolves. You both slowly stop texting. The let's catch up soon never turns into a plan. The birthdays start to get missed, months slip by, and it's not that you don't have a mutual love for each other anymore. And it could be like one versus the other, like leading this, but it's not that you don't hold love for this person anymore. It's just that life has now placed you on different paths. And I imagine when both of you stop long enough to recognize and realize that the mutual drift is occurring, it can sting. Because no one was essentially wrong and there's nothing to fix, but it's still leaving you something to grieve.
Yes. This is like that saying, you have friends for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. I like that. And I've always had to keep that in the forefront of my brain because for me, the mutual drift has happened quite a lot because
motherhood
is one really big part of it. But the other is I've always been the one putting that effort forward. So like I reach out on the birthday, I reach out on the anniversary, I reach out, and that never gets reciprocated. And I spent a lot of the younger years of my life essentially fighting to hold relationships together because I cared about these people. I wanted them to know that I cared about them. And I wanted to have that reciprocated. I wanted to know that they cared about me as much as I cared about them. And it was always really hard for me. And it really took me until my late 30s to like come to grips with, Adrienne, it's not personal.
Yeah.
And you only have so much energy to go around.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to let the drift happen.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Aristotle's utility, pleasure, and virtue friendships? Like, are you familiar with the language that Aristotle gave us thousands of years ago regarding the different types of relationships?
No.
So Aristotle essentially, I'm going to summarize, I'm going to paraphrase, guys, but Aristotle gave us some really incredible language for relationships thousands of years ago. And some friendships are based on utility. Okay. So we needed each other. Let's think about a work situation. Like, did you ever have a work wife when you worked in corporate?
Yes.
You're both going to the same place. You're both dealing with the same circumstances. I imagine there's some form of shared grievance with the environment that you're working in. 100%. And this is the person that made what you were going into every day doable. This is the person that allowed you to look forward to spending 8 hours of your precious time in this one location in order to pay your bills. And this is also often the person that we don't keep in touch with once we both depart the place with which we once worked, right? So that is a friendship based on utility. Some are about pleasure, right? So I'm sure we have the friends that we all have like fucked off with, you know, the person that we call when we just want to laugh, or we want to play hooky at work, or we want to escape something in our reality. There's an element of pleasure that we both find a common ground with, but eventually we have to grow out of that too. Or there has to be some type of sustenance built into that relationship in order for it to sustain. So there's the relationship built off of pleasure, and then there's the relationship built off of virtue. Now, I don't know about you, but for me at this point in my life, all of my friendships are built off of virtue with elements of play. I don't see a ton of utility in my life anymore. I feel like I've outgrown the utility piece. So pleasure and virtue are what the majority of my friendships are built off of. And these friendships, your friendships of virtue, are rooted in shared values and mutual growth.
I like that.
Yeah. So when the drift happens, if you're going through a drift, if you've recently been through a drift, if you went through a drift that you haven't fully grieved, right? Because it's still a little twingy to poke at when it comes up in your mind, it's really helpful to ask, what kind of friendship was this? It doesn't devalue what you had. It just gives it a better frame. Does that make sense?
It totally does. And I agree with you. I would say at this point in my life, I never had language quite like that to explain it. But I would say that at this stage in my life, too, most of my friendships are the virtuous kind. You know, I have some friendships where I can tell that they're trying to do the best that they can, given the fact that they're mothers with young kids, or they've been busy with family stuff. Like when you get to the teenage stage and you are literally like a taxi, that's a hard stage to maintain any sort of
or like a
relationship.
chef, a grocer, on top of being a chauffeur taxi, a coordinator for like extracurricular activities and having kids over, a maid. Like I could keep going.
The complaints department.
Yeah, absolutely. HR, you know, like you're a little bit of everything. And I think it's so interesting that we often collectively as a society talk about how hard it is when they're younger. And I don't ever want to discredit somebody's experience or water down somebody's experience with a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, an infant. Those are absolutely like the nights are long, but the years are short. That quote is so applicable. But I've come to find in my own personal experience, it's equally, if not more challenging the older they get.
I would definitely agree with that. When I was in it with my older 3 being really young, I was like, wow, this is really hard. But it's a lot of physical.
It's a lot of go. Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot of physical labor because you have to help them put on the pants. You have to help them put on the socks. You have to help them get fed. You have to bathe them yourself. Like you have to make sure that they make it to the potty on time. And if they don't, clean up the mess, right? Like it's a lot of physical work. But when they get into those like preteen, teenage years, it's a lot of emotional work because they push up against places where it challenges you to reparent yourself. It challenges you to ways that your brain might not work. I, for example, was not the lie to my parents kind of kid. Like if they told me no, I knew that I would get permission to go do the thing if I just behaved myself. And so that's what I did. I pretty much towed the line. I did not really have fights with my parents. The only thing I can think of that was an ongoing thing was clothes on my bedroom floor. And it was one little pile in front of my closet door because my bedroom door opened into the bedroom in such a way that it like blocked my closet door. It was 2 extra steps. Talk about a lazy kid, right? I had to close my bedroom door in order to open the closet door to put the clothes into the hamper in the bottom of the closet. Really not hard. But what I would do is at the end of the day, I would put them in a little pile in front of the door so that when I went into the closet the next morning to get my clothes out for school, I just put them in that. That was the only ongoing battle I can think of that I ever had with my parents because they're like, why is it on the floor? It wasn't all over my bedroom floor. It's just in this one little location. But that was like the quote unquote strife, right? That I had growing up. My husband always tells me you cannot benchmark your experience as a teenager against our kids because our kids are nothing like that.
It's the reparenting yourself through the parenting of your child. And like that takes on a whole personality of itself. It takes on a whole energetic load of itself. And I think it's very easy to lose sight of the fact that all of us are not only, or those of us that have children, I should say, are not only parenting, yes, the living being, but we're also reparenting the entire internal family system and child that lives inside of us. Like, I think that goes unmentioned often, but also unnoticed and personalized if you don't fully understand what it's like to do this thing, right? So getting through the mutual drift, some of the things that I have found helpful is ritualizing the goodbye, right? Writing a letter that you don't send, speaking their name with gratitude, but not grasping. This is not about burning bridges. And I think it's really important that we pay attention to that. It's about blessing the bridge that carried you to the point that you're at and then letting it be a part of your history, not your future.
Yeah. And I think the only other thing that I would add to that is remaining open in case for them, it is like time, right? For them to come back in because again, the love is still there. There was just a drift because of life circumstances, whatever those are. And because when I was younger, it used to feel very personal to me when people wouldn't maintain correspondence. And I mean, I even have family members. My mom is like, so have you talked to blah, blah, blah? And I'm just like, no, I reach out to them on their birthday and Christmas and all the holidays every single year. I try to talk to them in between and I get crickets back from them. So I'm open if they want to talk to me. I'm not closing that door. However, I can't invest any more energy in this relationship because it's not a relationship anymore.
No, there's no reciprocity there. So, okay. Friendship breakup number 2, the one-sided slow fade. I think this one hurts just a little bit more. This one tends to be a bit brutal because you tried.
Yes.
Right?
I think that's a little of what I was describing.
You initiated, you reached out, you kept the threads of connection alive until they frayed in your hands. And then you watch them disengage bit by bit until you have to admit that you were the only one that was still actually present in the friendship. And that kind of silence can often feel like being left unread by life itself. You know, so it's been a long time since that's happened with me.
Oh, see, I feel like I've had the mutual drift, but I feel like I've had this one more. And I think it actually goes back to my chart, Taylor.
Shocker.
Where, you know, I try to hold the space and be the attention that I always wanted, if that makes sense. Like, not in a negative way, just that not being seen and not being heard in the ways that I needed at times. A lot of times I was always the weird outcast. And when I did have somebody that saw me, even if it was just for a short period of time, I really treasured that. And I felt like I went above and beyond. I still do, to make sure that that person knows that I love and care about them. And I'm the one that will hold and try to keep that alive, you know, and in the past, it's felt deeply personal. That it wasn't maintained.
So what happens when you're the one who's fading away? right? Because there's the one-sided slow fade, and we're talking about it through the lens of obviously being the one to maintain the aliveness and the connection. But what happens when you're the one who's fading away? I think there's a hard truth here, and it goes both ways, which is you're allowed to outgrow people you still love. You know, disappearing though, this is the thing, disappearing without acknowledgement creates soul scars. And if this person mattered, if this person was good to you, if this person was there for significant moments in your life and you shared significant moments with them, I think it's really important that we take the time with each other to speak that truth and honor what existed, even if we fumble it, right? It's really important to say something because closure is an act of courage. And that's something that we don't give each other. It's really a gift. We are in this societal chapter, if you will. God, I hope it's a phase, you know, like kids go through phases where it's like, let them, you don't owe anyone anything. And I'm like, how dehumanizing is that? Now, it's one thing if you're in a relationship where there's active abuse, right? Or there's narcissism, or there's like, I think there are instances where it's completely appropriate to stop the communication and create a blockade and not go back, right? But we're speaking to the relationships where there was something like rich and deep and somebody just walks out without acknowledging the walkout. Like that is so traumatizing and painful to so many people, right? And it really does, it's really difficult as a human being, in my opinion, to look at that person the same way after that type of behavior has occurred, regardless of what's going on in their life.
Yeah. Well, it takes a level of maturity.
Yeah.
Right?
Pulling yourself out of your center and not being me.
Yeah. And we live in a very me, what's in it for me kind of culture.
Yeah.
We live in a culture where we've made it socially acceptable to ghost people.
Which is
and
so
it doesn't.
And I've done that. So like, hello, guilty, right? More so men than women, right? But when it comes to my girlfriends, like avoidance is absolutely something that I have like a bit of an anxious attachment. So I will avoid. I don't mind constructive conflict. I cannot stand aggression. And I think there's like an enmeshment between the two in our world right now. Like if it's conflict, it has to be aggressive. And it's like, no, you can still hold somebody in a really beautiful way and have a constructive conflicting conversation.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like what I told my son this morning. You do not have to like what it is that I'm saying.
Right.
And that's fine. However, you do have to understand what I'm saying. And that requires you to listen and speak in the proper proportions. You have 2 ears for listening and 1 mouth for talking. And he tends to use them in the reverse. And so that was essentially what I was saying to him this morning is like, I need you to actually hear what it is that I'm saying. It might not be your favorite. You might not like what I'm saying, but you do need to hear what I'm saying because we're going to keep having this communication issue otherwise. And it's very similar in friendships too, because the container that we live in, it is ripe for coming up with defensive and defensive responses and whatnot before you actually hear what it is that somebody is saying to you. And that's very hard to communicate with. And of course, because that feels gross and because you cared for this person, or maybe you still continue to care for this person, you don't want to make them feel bad. You're just trying to speak your truth. And that takes a lot of maturity. It's hard.
Yeah. And I think it's really important too, if you're on the receiving end of the one-sided slow fade, please remember that it doesn't require you to perform or shrink or earn a place back in someone's life. Like that's not what we want you to be doing. That's not going to honor your part in this entire process. And I also think it's important to remind you that like, you're not too much to love. You're not too hard to love. You're just no longer in their bandwidth. And it's really as simple as that. If somebody just has enough courage to step forward and say like, hey, I just don't have the bandwidth and I love you. And we've traversed X, Y, and Z together. And I don't want to leave you hanging, but I'm going to pull back into myself. And if and when I have the capacity to reach back out, I will. Right. I think it's really important. And trying to squeeze yourself into someone's disinterest is only going to delay your own healing in this process. So it's really, really important just to make sure that you don't personalize what can feel really personal. You know, are you familiar with, there's so much psychology that goes along with this conversation. Carl Jung, some people love him, some people hate him. I feel like that's very like Jung. You either love or hate Jung. And like his perspectives. And the 8th house in astrology is like a very, we call it the Jungian house. Are you familiar with his perspective, I should say, on making friends while wearing a mask?
Possibly, but I like how you worded that. So please elaborate.
So Jung said, often we form connections from our masks, not our true selves.
Oh, that's very true.
Right? You may have had a friend that made while you were in survival mode, or you may have made that friend where, in a portion of your life where you were playing small, or when you didn't know who you really were yet. And oftentimes when we evolve, your frequency evolves, and it's not personal, it's energetic math. Because we're making friends from the mask that we're wearing at the point in time that we meet the person in our life.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just looking back at my own life, I can see, like, I've always said to my husband, like, I don't have friends that I've maintained from high school. I have two very dear friends that I have maintained from college, but I don't have a lot of people from my past. And I think a lot of it has to do with how I've evolved and changed. And yes, I marched to my own drummer when I was younger. And for the most part, I didn't really care what anybody thought. But, there were parts of me that were still lonely because I didn't forge those deep connections that I wanted. And now that I am more open about
who you are,
who I am, and I walk in alignment with that truth now. I still have a very small circle of friends. I think my introvertedness will always have a very small circle of friends, but they're quality friends.
I love this is such a good segue because are you familiar with Dunbar's number?
No. See, look at this. You're like throwing all kinds of good stuff over the bow this morning.
So how many can we maintain, right? Science tells us that our brain max out at 150 meaningful connections. We've talked about like the nervous system only being capable of interacting with 150 people in a impactful, deep, resourced way over the span of our lifetime. Okay. That number includes family. It includes colleagues. It includes social media follows. It includes old roommates, your yoga teacher. This means that we're constantly adjusting who gets our energy. So we oftentimes look at letting go as something that is cold, right? But I want to rephrase this. We're not cold for letting go. We're human, and bandwidth is sacred. Science shows us that we unconsciously prune our social circles every 7 years. I love that because as a woman, we have 7-year cycles. So just like trees, we shed to grow. And if a friendship didn't make it through the last season of shedding or becoming, if you will, it's not failure, it's evidence of evolution.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of interesting ways to look at it. And there's a lot of psychology that has taken the time to unpack this very unique aspect, especially between females when it comes to friendships. So we're on number 3, right? The third type of friendship breakup, if you will, is the formal breakup. And I feel like this is the rarest, most mature kind of ending, where two people sit down and they say, this doesn't feel aligned anymore, and I care about you enough to be honest. It's brave, it's raw, and when it's done well, it leaves fewer wounds and more wisdom, and also opportunity at some point in the future. If you two decide, in 10 years from now that you want to be weird together again, you can, So there's an ethical side to breaking up, just like there is with another person that you're not platonic with, you're romantic with. And in an ideal world, we would all keep these breakups real. We would keep them kind. We would drop their performance. And we would say something along the lines of, I care about you, but I feel like we've been walking different directions. And I want to honor that instead of pretending like it's still working. What do so many of us do?
Oh, we keep pretending.
Right. And then what does that lead to?
Resentment and all kinds of other things that we stuff down inside of our system, and it turns into health problems.
Which is another type of breakup that we'll talk about, right? But like, this is all about stepping into, we talk about feminine and masculine all the time. I find this fascinating, right? Like, we're collectively obsessed with the feminine and the masculine. Yet in the moments where the feminine needs to be held by the masculine, so the structure of a breakup being met with the tenderness that we can embody at the same time oftentimes gets overlooked and underrepresented in these circumstances. So like, is it really feminine to walk off and say fuck you and slowly drift and not say a word?
Yeah. Well, society would say no, because that's action oriented, right? You are creating an action, you are severing a tie, and it's very hard edged.
Yes.
Whereas the feminine is more flowy and it's supposed to be receptive energy when it is being executed in a healthy way.
Yeah. So how do you get through a friend that's breaking up with you? It's probably going to shake your identity. You're probably going to question everything. And it's really important to let yourself grieve and even spiral. You know, we don't want this one experience or multiple, depending on how old you are. It's probably happened multiple times, right? We don't want this one experience to convince you that you're unlovable. So some people are seasonal, to Adrienne's point. Some people are sacred. Some are both. And their goodbye doesn't erase the good that you shared.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Absolutely.
Okay. Number 4, we just talked about things getting stuck in the body. Friendship breakup number 4, the type, the blow up. I feel like this is the most common one. At least what I've witnessed, you know, this is the most common one. Boom, right? The betrayal, the explosion, the text thread that you still can't believe happened. The voice memo you replay in your head at 3 o'clock in the morning. It keeps you up at night, right? This one doesn't fade, it erupts. And it oftentimes leaves you sifting through the ash trying to figure out what was actually real.
Well, and from a psychological perspective, this is the easiest one to walk away from because there's a really clear, distinct end. And while it leaves you emotionally trying to figure out and pick up the pieces, I think that's the biggest distinction between the third and the fourth is that the third, if you handle that in a very meaningful way, you don't internalize the woulda, coulda, shouldas. Yeah. Whereas with this next type, it is easier to walk away from because there's a very clear, distinct end. However, there's a lot of why.
It's often resentment that has built up too over time. Like it's people in a relationship choosing not to speak their truth in the moment the truth comes up, you know, and truths are unique. There are universal truths that I think a lot of us share, right? Maybe that's a smaller list than most of us realize. And then there are individual truths based on our own personal perception of life and experience. And it's much simpler, although it may not seem simpler, it's much simpler to say what you said, I really don't agree with, and I'd like to talk about it. Or like, I recognize that we're trending 2 different perspectives on this. And can we find a way to grow deeper through the difference of perspective? Or is it a deal breaker for us? It's much simpler to go there than it is to let that resentment build up over time and then blow up on somebody or do the slow fade.
However, it may be easier, but most people have not been taught how to do those skills. So it feels harder.
Yeah, I can see that.
Especially for people who are raised in households where they didn't see conflict.
Where they yelled.
Or, exactly. Yeah. It's one polar opposite or the other. There's no middle ground. And this is one of those things that, like, it makes my husband uncomfortable. Sorry, honey, I'm calling you out on the show. But it makes my husband really uncomfortable when he says something sharp and my response back to him. Now, I know this is a heteronormative relationship and not the girlfriend relationship we're talking about, but I think it's a good example. I will say, if that comment didn't make me feel very good, and I will do that in front of our children. And it makes him hella uncomfortable because he does not like dealing with disagreements that way. And I actually, inside my body, that feels weird for me too, because I never saw my parents fight. I never saw what a healthy disagreement would look like. And so I didn't learn those skills. I had to go through a lot of crap in my life in order to learn those skills. And so, you know, it's no fault of theirs. It just was not demonstrated to me. And so one of the things that I feel very strongly is really important is to demonstrate what that can look like with somebody you love. To my children. Because whether it's a platonic or a romantic relationship, these are going to be skills that they're going to need going forward so that resentment doesn't build. So that they can have these kinds of mature relationship transitions, that's what I'm going to call them, throughout the course of their life. And they can stand in their truth and say, this doesn't feel aligned to me anymore. Like I had a couple of dating relationships in college that like were totally not aligned. And I was so terrified of the fallout because I didn't know how to handle it, that I let the relationship go on so much longer than I should have. And it didn't get easy to walk away from it until there was a big explosive moment, like we're talking about, that then I can go, this moment right here is why I'm walking away from this relationship. And then there couldn't be, quote unquote, any argument about it. Which sounds like a very spineless thing to do, or at least I feel that way looking back at it now.
You understand the benefit, though, of addressing all of the things that lead to that moment, right? So I think that's the difference. Like when you don't understand the benefit of addressing the discomfort in the moment, it's very easy to allow that discomfort to build into something that eventually turns into a blow up. Whereas life has offered you an opportunity to continuously likely sit in the same classroom and pass the tests and go, okay, like this is either going to go one way or another. I can sit down and speak my truth, or I can allow this to build to a place of resentment where there's a blow up. And what's going to be better for me is probably going to be better for the other person as well, too. We don't realize that sitting down and telling somebody exactly where we are and exactly how we feel, as uncomfortable as it may feel in the moment, is actually benefiting both of you. What if your friend has no idea what's going on internally? What if they don't know you're upset about something? What if they don't understand the resentment? Because it hasn't been explained to them. That comes back to this culture of you owe no one an explanation. And it's just so like, what? You don't want to communicate? Like,
well, and that's where all the woulda, coulda, shouldas come. It's like, was it this thing that I said? Was it this thing that I did? Did I not do enough? Did I right? And that's where we ruminate and our mind runs because we did care about this person. And now all of a sudden there's this big blowout. And it's like, well, what did I do to cause that?
And there's really no closure in that blowout, or the blowout. We're talking about blowouts like a diaper. The blowout.
That's how it feels.
Yeah, accurate. But when it comes to the blow up, I don't think there's actually closure in that. Because things that really should have been said were not said, and things that should have never been said oftentimes end up being said. And you end up attacking each other's character, which is not the point. It's not how you got there in the first place. So are you familiar with, I'm going to say the name wrong, but it's another psychologist. It's Sartre, 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 something. I'm saying it incorrectly. And conflict as a mirror of the self. Are you familiar with this?
I often where you're triggered is where they're mirroring something inside of you.
Yeah. So Sartre, if I'm saying this wrong, I'm so sorry. Like said, other people are our mirrors, and conflict is oftentimes when the reflection shows us things that we've been trying not to see. So who were you in the friendship? What did you tolerate? What boundaries did you ignore? The pain that we oftentimes experience in these types of situations is not pointless. It's a portal.
What is this mirroring back to me? Why does this trigger me?
Yeah.
What about this situation is a trigger for me? Yeah. I found myself asking that question so often in the last 4 years. And I mean, I thought about it more so, but I can tell you that I've been consciously very hyper aware of it in the last 4 years. And instead of where does this relationship bring things up inside of me, it flips the frame. And then you're actually going, okay, so this behavior is making me feel a certain way. What is it telling me? What is it speaking through me? And it's helped me to really grow emotionally, spiritually, in a lot of ways, because I've been able to flip this frame.
Yeah.
And instead of it feeling like it's being done to me, what is it trying to show me?
Right.
And these can be really big opportunities for internal growth and development if we remain open to seeing it instead of as an attack. But it feels like an attack. Why?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Right? It feels like an attack. It might not have been intended as one. But it feels that way to me. Why does it feel that way? Right. And when you really sit with that question, it makes navigating situations like this significantly easier.
I think a lot of the times for me, when it comes to asking, what does it feel for me? The things that get like really sit in my crawl. Man, that's such a thing my parents said. You ever find yourself saying things and you're like, oh, I sound like my mom, and mothers are like a great indication of what it's going to be like to make relationships with other females. Like, what was your mom's relationships like? Does she have a strong group of friends, or is she constantly cycling through, or is she a loner? Like, you can learn a lot from watching your mom because she's the one that's mirroring how you do female relationships. That's your blueprint, babe, But what I've come to find is when something really gets in my crawl, it's because somebody has acted in a way that I would consider myself to never act. Like, yes. I wouldn't do that, and if there was something to be said, I would have said something, and there's nothing to be said. So obviously I'm in left field and out to lunch on all of this because I wouldn't do what you're doing. Even if it meant the end of our relationship, at least we both got to speak our piece. So how do we get through a blow up? Scream in your car, cry in the bath, write a letter, and then burn it.
Things that create that much of an emotional charge. Emotions are energy in motion.
Yep.
You need to move that energy. Otherwise, it will turn into something else inside of your body. So yes, cry, punch a pillow, punch a mattress, scream into a pillow, yell in your car, listen to music that moves energy through your system. Like, there's 1,001 ways. Go to acupuncture. Like, we cannot sit on this ruminating kind of energy. And we do, because we don't collectively have the skills to be able to have these kinds of conversations, which is why Taylor and I thought it was so important to do this episode, because we've all dealt with these types of relationship shifts.
Dealer or receiving, like we have all been on both sides.
I mean, I can say that I've been on both sides of all of these. And I also have the perspective at this point in my life to see my role and why I chose which role and how I've been able to grow from the choices that I made. And like, really, that's what we're hoping that this episode will do, is not only help you with the transition process.
Naming it, like naming what happened. I think sometimes we have a really hard time placing, like, what was it? Was it a slow drift? Was it one-sided? Was it mutual? Right? Was it a blow up? So like, what was it? And then being able to name it gives us the ability to determine the tools that are best for integrating the experience.
Absolutely. And it's important to integrate the experience, because otherwise you're going to keep hitting the same skip in the record. And the way in which you show up in relationships is going to remain the same.
And we are not here to repeat patterns. We are here to grow through them. And I think the only thing I would add to, getting through is, after you've moved the emotion, go excavating. The pain that you're experiencing has a story to tell you about your standards. So your sovereignty, your self-respect, let it teach you, and let that lesson shape who you become as you move into your next set of relationships. Conflict as an engine for growth, just another concept. I have notes on all of this. Clearly, it's something that I've taken some time to dive into, because it's something that I've experienced in so many different ways in my life. But like, conflict oftentimes creates tension, and tension births growth. So when it comes to these types of situations with, our female friendships or our male friendships, just remind yourself that you're becoming someone new, someone who doesn't need to set herself on fire to stay warm in a friendship. Like, every time you grow through one of these situations, you're birthing a new version of yourself, if you allow the situation to support the development or the evolution of who you are. You are not the person that walked into that fight. You're going to be the person that emerged after it. Like, that's the primary perspective shift that we're looking for. Are we always going to walk in with our gloves on, or are we going to finally be the person that walks out dropping the gloves and leaving them behind?
And that's hard. That takes practice, and it takes reflection.
Especially when you don't have the example.
Well, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier, is like, I didn't have that example. And so when somebody came at me with gloves on, I felt like a deer in headlights. My nervous system didn't even know how to respond to that. Like, I froze. And I have felt that freeze many times in my life when I have been in a situation with a friend who is, I'm going to say, more fiery than me, but like they don't have, it's almost like a little bit of that edge is part of their love language. And
thank you. I feel seen.
well, but then when I don't, like, that isn't my nature, right? Like, I have had moments where I have had to reflect. Are they angry with me because that's how it felt?
Yeah.
But then I realized, no, they're not angry with me. This is just their means of communication. And so there's so much that you can take away from. There was something that I wanted to kind of bring up too about grief. In traditional Chinese medicine, the fall is typically that season of letting go. And we hold grief in the lungs. So when we don't allow for that letting go, it can physically cause like respiratory related issues and whatnot. It doesn't have to be in the fall season, but our year takes us through a clearinghouse for like the different things in the different buckets in our life. And the fall is a great time for letting go. And if we don't let go of things that we're holding on to in that season, we're going to have more respiratory illness. We're going to have breathing issues. We're going to have like more things that are lung related. So when we talk about how this energy shows up as dis-ease or disharmony in the body, letting go is incredibly important. Gaining perspective, coming around the spiral, right, of the year, where like we're coming up on that same set of circumstances or the anniversary of this thing happening, but you're at a different place in the spiral. So you have a different perspective on why this thing took place. What did it give you? What have you taken away from it since then? So I just kind of wanted to put that in there as we're thinking about this letting go process, because it doesn't have to be cancel culture feeling.
No.
Where you're done. This is it. Hard line in the sand.
The purpose of this podcast is to say, like, we really owe it to each other to treat each other better. And the entire cultural acceptance of let them and we don't owe anything to each other is really not actually moving us in the direction that I believe we all collectively say we want to go. And the way that we treat the women in our life says a lot about us. It reflects a lot about how we treat our inner world. Like oftentimes our outer world is just a reflection of our inner world. And if we're capable of cutting people off without explanation, especially if you had significant experiences with them, or you're capable of feeding them a line of bullshit that they know is bullshit and then walking away, like what does that say about how you address your inner world? Clearly you're in conflict with yourself. And I think that's the perspective that I've really settled into this year, where I'm like, if you didn't have the ability to come and have a conversation with me, even if it was like an ending conversation, a clearing conversation, my life is better off without you. I know that sounds really harsh, but we need to be able to hold each other to this standard of energetic exchange that is equitable for each other. And we haven't done that. And then we just accept girls are just mean. Bullshit. Girls are taught to be mean.
Well, so that goes back to what we were saying at the beginning. Like this is intergenerationally baked into us because of history and what came from the burning times and what predated the burning times, where women's ability to relate to one another, the ability to hold property, the ability to hold their own money without being married, like all of this stuff is part of the soup we've been marinated in. And this is an opportunity to take steps in the direction of creating the change that we want to see, but we have to embody that change first.
And it's difficult. I mean, why would we lie about it? It's absolutely difficult, and it's so incredibly worth it. And so there's one more. There's 5 different types, guys. There's one more that I would like to talk about. And I personally find this one the most painful. And this is the one that I've experienced the most, and it's the sudden ghosting. So there's no text messages, there's no warning, there's just complete and utter absence. This person that you have spent time with, exchanged ideas with, shared your heart with, just vanishes, and you're left talking to a digital graveyard if you're talking to anything at all. Checking their stories on social media, God bless. I think social media is really problematic for this too. Like somebody can absolutely walk out of your life or like choose to sidestep communication that you've sent to them, but they're sharing their whole life on social media. And it's like, I know you have the ability to pick up your phone. I know you have the ability to message. I know you have the ability to respond to something that I've said to you, and you're choosing not to because you're clearly very active on all these other parts. And I think life is just easier when you couldn't see all of that. It goes back to that 150 and that pruning every 7 years, but rereading your last message again and again and again, wondering what you did wrong. This one leaves the loudest silence, in my opinion.
Yeah. And the door wide open for rumination because you question everything you said, everything you did. Did I forget an anniversary or something that was really important? Like, what was it that happened?
Or did I not reciprocate in a way that there was an expectation for reciprocity, but that was never clearly communicated? So I couldn't say like, hey, I'm capable of showing up in that capacity, or I'm incapable of showing up in that capacity. And does that still work for you? You know, or did I say something that upset you? Like there is absolutely nothing to work off. There's nothing to find closure. And I hate it when people are like, you're just going to have to move on with it. This is your closure. What?
Yeah, it's not closure though. This is kind of like when women are and this happens more in heteronormative relationships simply because homosexual relationships tends to be more conversation.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Because women are verbal. So naturally they will talk to one another just because we're more verbal creatures by nature. Right. So when we're in male-female relationships, this is where the breakup happens and you're like, what did I do? I don't know. He seems to be like quieter than usual. Did I do something wrong? Is there something wrong in our relationship? Maybe we haven't even broken up yet, but like your wheels are starting to spin like this. Women internalize conversations like this a lot. And it doesn't matter what kind of relationship, but this is where you're stereotypically going to see it like portrayed in movies and stuff like that, with the girl going, I don't know, maybe he's cheating. Maybe I should check his phone because he seems really distant and da 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 da. It has to do with feeling safe. That's why we spiral.
They get quiet, they pull away, right? Like, and women are perceptive. So you don't have to, and non-locality applies here. I don't have to be in the same room as you to know that you're pulling your energy away. I can feel it. I can feel it from across town. I can feel it from across 3 states. Like I can feel it. Right. So like women have a tendency to do this too, where like it's that resentment piece. Something's going on internally, but instead of verbalizing it so that we can clear the air and move on in whatever way is most appropriate, they execute through behavior. And now their behavior is out of alignment with the way that they've actually shown up in the relationship, which creates confusion. You know, so I think women do the same thing where like we've got a lot of women that have been raised to behave like men. And while we are communicative creatures, we haven't been taught to utilize that communication in a way that's beneficial to personal evolution as well as the evolution of our relationships.
I would agree with that. And I think a lot of that, again, goes back to reparenting ourselves. I saw this thing on Instagram the other day that really kind of hit home that our generation, meaning Zennial millennials primarily, have had to learn how to parent while reparenting themselves. And I thought that was a very profound statement. It's very true. We didn't have a lot of these kinds of communication techniques, abilities.
But there's also like parenting your parents too.
Well, yeah, there's that too.
Add that in. Like the aging parent conversation, I think life really is full circle. Like you grow up to grow down. Old people become more like children, sorry, respectfully. Many of them, you know, like you get to 85 and there's an element of toddlerness and infancy in that too. Like priorities change, behavior shifts, communication's very different. Sometimes, a lot of the times there's physical decline and a requirement for around the clock care. But like you got the one person in the middle, which right now is that Zennial millennial population, and they're parenting their children, reparenting themselves, and parenting.
And beginning with the parents. Yes. Beginning with the parents. Yes. And
that's a lot.
It is a lot. And that does factor in to these kinds of relationship dissolving situations, right? Not only with the skills that we have or haven't been taught, but also the demand on our energetic resources to be able to show up in certain relationships. And I think this is where it becomes more important than ever for us to be able to articulate, hey, and this falls into one of the types we've already discussed, but it's hard when you have somebody that makes the statement of, I just don't have the bandwidth for this right now, but then there's no explanation, there's no follow-up, and then there's no closure. Because that kind of crosses a couple of these that we've already talked about. I think really what it boils down to is being able to stand in your truth and communicate what is true for you.
Right.
And be able to listen with compassion for what it is that is being said back to you. You might not agree with it. You might not like it. It might feel gross to you in the moment, but being able to remain open to hear their truth, that is a skill that we are deeply lacking today. And I think those are, for me, ghosting is hard, but the ones where they will
like
say
the one-sided drift.
Well, it's a little bit like a one-sided drift, but there's a statement of, I don't have the bandwidth for this right now. And I can honor that. But then the question becomes, okay, many months down the road, do you now have the bandwidth? Should I be reaching out to you? Like, I would like
and
to.
Do I really want to at that point? You know, like any relationship that you participate in is going to have an element of emotion. That is just the way that relationships go. Marriage, parenting, family dynamics, and platonic friendships. There's going to be an element of emotional exchange. There's going to be an element of energetic exchange. And to your point, I can handle somebody saying, I just don't have the bandwidth to show up right now, and owning it as themselves. Like, I'm going to take this as my responsibility. It's a me, not you type of thing. Like, I'm going to own this right now. I'm going to be a bit reclusive. I've done this with my friends before. Like, hey, I'm in a hole right now. It's not personal. I'm really quiet. As I crawl out of that hole, I will become more communicative. I promise. It's me, not you. I just wanted to communicate that. What I can't handle is when someone's like, I don't have the bandwidth for this, and then turns around and tells someone else you're emotionally burdensome. What do you mean? Like, I held just as much space for you as you did for me. It might have looked different, but I made space for all of your stuff the way that you made space for mine. And I'm forever grateful for the time that you gave me and the space that you held. But I'm human and I have emotions, and we're in a relationship, and emotional exchange is a part of that. What I will not tolerate is somebody telling me I'm a burden.
Because that shows that person should have had a mature ending. And communication around a proper ending rather than a not right now. Because a not right now leaves the door open.
Yeah.
And this is no longer aligned. Creates closure.
And to be honest, if somebody is like, I don't have the bandwidth, that's a boundary, and I'm going to respect your boundary. Please don't expect me to reach out. You're going to have to be the one to initiate communication. I am not crawling into another hole to pull you out of that hole again. Friendships like that are exhausting.
Yeah.
This sounds awful as we're talking about holes and diving into them. Like, I have enough holes that I have to dive into every day with like children and my own relationship and work. Like, I don't have the bandwidth to read through the encrypted language of someone else. If you need help, tell me. I'm going to give you my hand. If you need a place to safely vent, tell me. My ears are open, my shoulders open, and my mouth is closed. Like, I can be that place. But without specific guidance and direction as to what it is you need from me, I can't provide any of those things for you or tell you I can't. Right? In which case, we are in a really fucked up situation where people get their feelings hurt when that could have been completely and utterly avoided.
One of the things that I love about my relationship with Taylor is she will be like, do you have the bandwidth for this right now? And I always have appreciated that statement, whether it's a professional or a personal question, because I might get her message while my house is falling down around me. And it's not that I don't want to be present, but do you have the bandwidth for this right now? And I'll be honest, like, I'm up to my eyeballs in life. Fill in the blank. I will reach back out to you, and then I will, like, when my head comes above water and I feel like I can hold the space. Because the thing is, I want to be that space that I want, right?
Like, undivided attention.
Correct.
Yes.
And so many of us, that's really what we want deep down inside, is for somebody to be able to see us and hear us and honor our truth, whether it is mutually agreed upon truth or there might be dissonance there. It doesn't matter. Like deep down, we all want to be seen and heard for who we truly are at our essence self.
Yeah.
That is where so much fucking health issue drama comes from, is that we don't feel like we can authentically be seen and heard.
Yeah.
And so I've always appreciated that Taylor's like dropping in. I have something for you. Do you have space for this right now? Do you have time for this right now? And I'll be honest with her. And I try to be mindful of the same thing. Sometimes I have verbal diarrhea and I just start with, this happened today, right?
But most of my friends at this point understand that if I don't respond, it's because I don't have the bandwidth, because we have that open communication.
Sure.
And then I'll come around when I finally have the space and I'll be like parachuting in, like coming in on my parachute, dropping back into the conversation, because I can give, to your point, the type of attention that I would want to receive when I'm sharing something. So it's like having enough of a foundation in your friendship to have open communication, to understand that it's not personal. It's the friendships where that wasn't present that personalization became really easy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it comes back to what this is mirroring back to you. So you think that it has to be a fundamental flaw within you.
Yeah.
Rather than a reflection of their lived experience.
Right.
And that was a huge lesson for me.
I can't, like, we all have enough on our plates that I can't sit here and do a Where's Waldo with what's going on in your world. Like, I just need you to share it with me. Like, is shit hitting the fan? Okay. Can I hold space for you? Is there anything that I can do? No. Okay. I'm good. Come back when you have a moment. The acknowledgement of that, like, yeah, I'll be back when my house isn't on fire. Cool. I can really appreciate that. But I've had enough, especially in the last 3 years. Like, I'm going to do a whole post on this because I think rites of passage are not talked about enough. And I'm starting to see women on the internet talk about, especially like 38 to 42.
Yes.
Right. 28 to 31. I'm like, yeah, babe. You're in a rite of passage. It was supposed to be bumpy. The house was supposed to catch on fire. You were supposed to question every aspect of your life. We're not here to pathologize these rites of passage. But, I think part of our rites of passage too is learning how to be tender with one another, learning how to actually behave like women should in female relationships. No pressure, ladies, right? But we are the example. We are the heartbeat of the world.
We're also the generation that's supposed to change this narrative too.
Right. And if we're showing up, and there's a meme on Instagram and it's like, we're not doing mean girl energy at the age of 30. If you're still carrying that, get a therapist. I'm like, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And not everything has to be a self-help discovery. Jesus Christ, I've had friendships where I'm like, is every conversation going to be like this, where we have to pick something out and talk about how it's evolved us? Like, holy Christ, can we just sit quietly in each other's company and enjoy the silence and the tea?
Yeah.
Because it's not that serious. It's serious, but it's not that serious.
So can you tell that Taylor's the more fire sign of the two of us? Because I'm the one that's like, okay, I feel like the therapist. When I used to go to school dances, man, I wish I had charged like a nickel every time somebody came up to me for like advice and whatnot. I never got asked to dance. I should have just set up a table in the corner and charged for therapy sessions, because I would hold that space for people, right? But I have gotten to the point in my life, to your point, around that 38 to 42 transition. We talked about it a little bit in the previous episode for my life, right? It just happened to coincide with the fact that I am literally knocking on the door of 42. And when this episode comes out, I will have just crossed that threshold. And like, I did hold that space. And it gets exhausting to be the person that is always where that stuff lands. There has to be reciprocity. And it's important to be able to do that. And that's where I've had to find more of Taylor's ability to articulate this. This has been very hard for me. This has been a self-development thing for me, because I've never been able to be like, this is exhausting and I can't hold space for this right now. I just will sit there and be like, okay, I've got you. It's okay. And then I'll walk out of the conversation absolutely exhausted with nobody to hold me.
Yeah, and it's just all about, it comes back to just telling the truth and doing it in a
Mhm.
kind way, like
Mhm.
it's really that simple. Like if we were to whittle this all down, what's your truth? How can you communicate it kindly? How can you take responsibility for as much of your truth as you can? If there's something in the relationship that's really bothering you, how can you communicate that in a kind way, which is probably a part of your truth? How can we hold each other's hearts the way that we would want our hearts to be held? Because I imagine for the most part, all of us have been on both sides of this, and none of us like being ghosted, and none of us like seeing the one side adrift, and both of us get confused when we're both mutually drifting apart, right? And nobody likes the blow up. We both feel like shit and hungover after the fact. So really it boils down to how can we hold each other's hearts the way that we would want our hearts to be held? And how can we communicate in the clearest, kindest way, knowing that we're going to trip and fall as we do it? That's the whole point. We only get better, most of us. There's always that one person that's like, I did it. We did not walk before we crawled. And we did not run before we walked. And it's the same thing here. So every friendship that has ended has likely shaped your boundaries, has likely honed your intuition, has likely really played into your ability to discern. Not all your friendships were meant to last, but they all meant something. And I think that's really important. So, is there anything else you would drop in this episode, Adrienne?
That female friendships are really good for your nervous system.
We need each other.
We do. We need each
act
other.
Like the police.
We literally need sisterhood for cortisol levels, for our nervous system. Yep. Heart function, because it has to do with frequency and electricity. Like we need these kinds of communities that are female centric for our health and well-being. And learning the skills and stepping into your truth to communicate what is true for you is going to help you find your tribe. Your vibe, I know this sounds hokey, but it's true. Your vibe attracts your tribe.
And as your vibe changes, as your frequency shifts, so will your tribe. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that anything's wrong and that you're broken.
Yes. And I have found personally that the more I honor my truth, which is hard. When you tell yourself stories like, I'm not enough, or my voice isn't important to be heard, or, I mean, a lot of us were raised in that seen and not heard generation, right? So like when we tell ourselves these stories, it becomes part of the conversation in relationships, right? Like, oh, my voice isn't meant to be heard, blah, 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 right? So the more that we can embody this truth and authenticity, you're going to find the people that you can create those kinds of virtuous relationships with. The ones that you can grow together. You can honor each other's evolution and evolve together. And those are the ones that really last and are meaningful and you'll come back to over and over again. I'm so grateful that I met Taylor.
Likewise.
4 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh my God, 4 years ago now. And we were connected by somebody who was like, oh, I know this person that I think that you should really get to know. And I just hit it off with her. And
Was it Sam?
Yeah, it was. Okay. It was magical to be able to find somebody who intellectually could hold that space for me, who vibrationally, frequency-wise could hold that space for me, that I can go way into the woo weeds with. And you know what I mean? And I don't have many people that I can do that with, but the ones that have met my frequency.
Yeah. They stay.
Do that with me. Yes. And those are the kinds of connections that help you with literally your health expression.
Yeah.
So being able to stand in your truth is hard, transformative, and crazy empowering in life and in these relationships that you create for your health and well-being.
And you're allowed to be seen, you're allowed to evolve, and you're allowed to let go. Just do so in love. I think that's the biggest thing. Like if your tribe ain't vibing with you anymore, go have honest conversations so that you can walk away without anything lingering on your heart, but also without wrecking theirs.
So, I think that's important.
Yeah. Adrienne, you did great. For having vertigo, you've done amazing. You've stayed upright for the entire episode. I'm really proud. So
me too.
You've done great. Remember, we're on YouTube. Please go watch and subscribe. We're still building the channel out. We've got lots of videos. Adrian and I, every single week, record and release a somatic weather map. So I walk you through the upcoming astrology for the week and I anchor it into your body so you can understand it in a practical way. Astrology is in a gorgeous language and is wonderful when it's practically applied. And then Adrian does this beautiful thing where she adds the element of sound and frequency to what's coming up for the week. She gives you something that you can literally pop headphones into, close your eyes, and utilize as many times as you need in that week, and then go back to if you really enjoyed the session. So you can find us on YouTube at Totally Not Appropriate. Obviously, we're coming to you from some streaming platform. So don't forget to leave a comment. I go in there and check every day. I love to chat. So please leave a comment. I want to hear from you. Did you like this episode? Was there a previous episode that you liked? What do you want to hear from us next? And obviously, word of mouth is how podcasts grow. So if this landed, please share it with somebody who would benefit from this episode. And until next time, stay well.